The courtroom was silent as Jessa Monroe stood tall in front of Judge Beckett, her eyes burning with rebellion as the sentence was passed, assigning her not to prison, but to the custody of a reclusive mountain man named Wyatt Granger, a man carved from solitude and sorrow. Driven deep into the Appalachian wilderness, she was dropped at the edge of a gravel path, where Wyatt waited with his rugged truck, wordless and unmoved, his stare colder than the mountain winds. The ride up was steep and full of tension, her sarcasm met with silence, her defiance ignored by a man who had lived through war and heartbreak and now sought only stillness. At the cabin, a structure built by hand and weathered by storms, she met her reality: no electricity, no cell service, no escape. Wyatt made it clear: no nonsense, no laziness, and no disrespect. The first night, she expected control, dominance, punishment. But instead, he gave her his bed and took the floor, not out of chivalry, but because he believed in earning trust, not forcing fear. That confused her more than anything. Each day after was a battle, splitting wood, hauling water, cooking meals she didn't understand, and enduring his frustrating silence. She tried to provoke him, test him, seduce him, anger him, but nothing worked. He wasn't a man who played games. When she slipped and twisted her ankle, he carried her without a word, wrapped her foot in cloth, and went right back to chopping logs. The silence spoke louder than screams. At night, she'd lay awake in his bed, listening to wolves howl, wondering who he really was, and why the judge thought this punishment would change her. And slowly, it began to. Her walls didn't crash down, they eroded. One morning, she rose before him and made the fire. The next, she asked him how to properly stack wood. It wasn't just the mountain that changed her, it was him. The way he never touched her unless necessary, the way he didn't leer or scold or expect thanks. He was broken too. She saw it in the way his hands trembled after bad dreams, in the long scars across his back he never explained, in the way he stood in the woods like he was apologizing to the trees. Still, she pushed. One night she asked, "Why'd you give me your bed?" And he said, "Because I never take what isn't offered. Not even dignity." It hit her harder than any slap. She started seeing him, not as a captor, not as a punishment, but as a man surviving in silence. The days turned to weeks, and somewhere in the biting wind and quiet chores, something softened between them. He watched her less like a burden, more like a storm he respected. When she tried to run, he let her go, knowing the woods would bring her back, and they did. Cold, hungry, crying, she returned, and he said nothing, just handed her a blanket and made tea. That night, for the first time, she asked to sit beside him. No words. Just warmth. The mountain was changing her. And he was starting to believe he could be more than her warden. He could be her refuge. The morning after her failed escape, Jessa sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, steam rising from a chipped mug of tea Wyatt had left beside her before disappearing into the woods, and for the first time since being handed off like a stray dog by the justice system, she didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt like someone learning to breathe in a world that didn't demand noise to prove she existed. She watched the sun rise over the frost-covered trees, saw a fox dart between pines, and when she turned her head, she saw him in the distance, splitting logs with the kind of rhythm that only came from muscle memory and pain. He didn't ask where she'd gone the night before. He didn't lecture her. He just made her tea. And that silence wrapped tighter around her than the blanket. She hated it. She needed someone to yell, to fight her, to match her chaos. But Wyatt only gave her stillness, and it was starting to scare her more than prison ever had. That afternoon, the storm rolled in fast. Black clouds over the peaks, wind like fists, and rain so hard it erased the trails. The power cut out just after dusk, the old generator sputtering and dying. Wyatt moved fast, calm, efficient, boarding up windows, shifting supplies, preparing for whatever came. She tried to help, fumbling with tarp and rope, but he didn't mock her. He just showed her how to tie a knot, how to anchor it. They barely spoke, but she felt herself following him like a heartbeat. The flood came in the night. The river rose and took part of the lower trail with it, swallowing the escape route she'd mapped in her mind. She stood at the edge of the porch in the storm's eye, hair soaked, heart thundering, and Wyatt appeared beside her, wrapped her in his jacket, and led her back inside. No words. Just warmth. Just presence. Inside, the fire flickered weakly, and when the roof threatened to leak, they dragged the mattress in front of the hearth. That night, for the first time, they shared space, close, under the same heavy quilt. She couldn't sleep. She watched the firelight dance across his face, saw the jagged scar that ran along his collarbone, and for the first time she wanted to ask, not to pry, but to understand. She whispered, "What happened to you?" And after a long silence, he said, "Everything." In the morning, the world outside looked different. Trees torn, paths gone, the mountain quiet in a way that felt sacred. They cleaned together. Repaired. Rebuilt. And for every act of work, a layer between them peeled away. She stopped asking when they'd be done. Stopped checking the calendar. She didn't realize when the days stopped being a sentence and became a rhythm. One evening, while gutting fish, she asked him why he never touched her. Not even a hand on the back, not even when she slipped. He paused, then said, "Because I know what it's like to be used. And I won't be that man." She wanted to cry then, because no one had ever spoken about her body with that kind of reverence. She'd used it like a weapon, a shield, a distraction, but he treated it like something sacred. From that day, she began asking real questions. About the scars, the medals in the drawer, the letters in a box he never opened. He told her bits and pieces, about the war, about losing his brother, about the woman who once wore the ring now buried in his sock drawer. And in return, she gave him her truths, the overdose, the foster homes, the nights she'd screamed into walls because it was the only way to feel alive. They didn't heal each other. They just existed in the same raw space long enough to stop bleeding. One night, she fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, and he didn't move. When she woke, he was still there. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. But something had shifted. The storm outside had passed, but something inside her was just beginning. The judge came 3 weeks later. Early. Unexpected. Pulled up in a Jeep with mud-caked tires and a folder in his hand. Jessa was outside, sleeves rolled, stacking wood. Her hair was tied up. Her mouth didn't twist with sarcasm anymore, it softened when she smiled. "Time's up," the judge said. "You've done your part." She looked at Wyatt, who stood behind her, silent as always. "You can come back," the judge added. "Start fresh. You're free." Free. The word felt wrong in her mouth now. She turned back to the porch, stepped up to Wyatt, looked into the eyes that had never tried to tame her, only meet her where she was. "If I stay," she said, "it's not because I was given. It's because I'm choosing." And he didn't say much, he just said, "Then choose." And she did. She chose the mountain. She chose the men who never took. She chose the fire, the silence, the peace. But most of all, she chose herself.